For the past 2 years, I have worked in youth ministry in some form or another. When I started this work, I had no idea what I was doing, and more importantly, no idea why I was doing it. My educators and mentors have taught me much about how to do this work, but none of them could teach me why. That was something I had to learn on my own. If I attempted to describe why I do what I do, I would never be able to fully articulate my reasoning. What I can do, however, is tell you a few stories that shine a light into the lives of my students, and hopefully, through stories, I will be able to explain why I do what I do. Recently, my youth group went on a retreat to Sun River. For the most part, we did nothing besides simply be with one another. Some people spent several hours trying to put together a 1,000-piece puzzle just to find out the pieces were missing, and some people decided to just sit around and talk. Regardless of the activity, everyone was content just being present with one another. One story from the weekend that I will never be able to forget comes from playing Spiderweb. The object of this game was to get your team from one side of the web of ropes to the other without touching the webs. The catch was that each gap in the web could only be crossed once. For the most part, the students could work together, boosting each other up and helping others climb through the web. One student, after helping the majority of the group cross, realized that no one was left to help him through. This student noticed that there was a gap about this wide, 3 feet off the ground. Without thinking about it too much, the student takes a few steps back, sprints forward, and dives through the opening. Upon hitting the ground and gaining a few scratches, the student noticed that he had touched the rope mid-dive. Without missing a beat, the student got up and repeated the process 2 more times until he had successfully traversed the web. Looking back, I realized that the student wasn't trying to be the hero for his team. He was simply trying to have fun with those around him. He was being true to his normal, goofy self, and because of that, everyone will have a story they will remember for the rest of their lives. These students know how to be present and enjoy the simplicity of fun. Last summer, the youth group went to Camp White Branch for a week. The leaders from my church, myself included, were the directors of the camp. This job kept us all fairly busy throughout the week, trying to make sure that everything was running smoothly. Because of this, I got to interact with most of the students, but didn't get to spend much time with anyone in particular. Midway through the week, we had scheduled a movie night on the lawn. As we were running around frantically trying to set up the equipment necessary, I saw a camper sitting by themselves outside of the chapel. I mildly recognized this camper, but did not know them personally. Assuming they were just waiting for someone, I continued about my work, needing to finish the task at hand. As I continued to run around, I noticed that this person was still alone on the bench, so I passed on my duties to someone else and went and sat with this camper. I simply asked how this person was doing, and the words started to flow like a broken dam. The student talked for the greater part of 2 hours while I just sat there and nodded, and it may be the most important conversation I have ever had. This camper opened up to me about things he had never spoken of before. School problems, grades, self-esteem issues, family problems, teen pregnancy, teen parenthood, and abortion. The camper had lived for so long in silence, just waiting for someone to ask them how they were really doing. This camper was going through so much pain, and no one around them knew. They were being weighed down by the many struggles of their life and had no one to share it with. This person did not need someone to talk to, just someone to listen and help them shoulder the weight they carried around every day of their life. At first, it was easy for me to think that this was an isolated event, and that most teenagers did not go through situations like this. However, I have learned over the past 2 years that this affects not only more teenagers than I previously thought it, but it affects my own kids as well. As I have grown closer to my kids, they have opened up to me about some of the issues they face on a day-to-day basis. One issue that continuously reappears is depression. We humans are amazing actors, and my kids are no different. They are able to put on a smile and pretend that everything is okay in their world, but underneath that facade, they are crawling in darkness, trying to find some sort of hope. As my kids have walked through this darkness, they have shared with me feelings of loneliness and hopelessness. They describe how life feels empty and void, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel, no hope that the situation they are currently in will ever improve. Several of my kids have described to me that this weight begins to weigh on them so much that life no longer seems worth living. When I hear about these thoughts, I can do nothing but hold them in my arms and remind them that they are fearfully and wonderfully made and loved more deeply than they will ever understand. This brokenness in their lives of my kids breaks my heart on a daily basis. Although they may appear to be perfectly happy with their lives, I know that so much pain and darkness can be lying just below the surface. As I have walked with my kids over the past 2 years, I have learned their lives are more complex and complicated than would first appear. These students have the ability to laugh like no one I have ever seen before, to enjoy each other's company, and to make a fool out of themselves when necessary. They are also carrying much more than anyone would ever realize, and simply need an ear to hear the pain of their lives. And these people I love, my kids, need hope in the midst of their hopelessness. And that is why I do what I do. In the complexity of the teenage life, I want to point my kids to the one true source of hope in this world, Jesus Christ. I want to teach and love and simply be with my kids in order to direct them towards hope. And I recognize that I am only one small light pointing towards the truth. To everyone in this room who comes in contact with a teenager, I urge you to be a light pointing them towards hope as well. The teenage life is messy at best, but by plunging into their complex world, you might just discover that you have fallen in love, just like I have. Thank you.